At my aunt's funeral, my cousin tried to expel me over my black lace outfit, my uncle's threats, and my grandma's defiant blessing sparked a viral grief revolution. I still remember the snap of the clasp as I fastened the last button on my black lace jumpsuit. My name's Mara, I'm 28, and I live in Charleston, South Carolina. Today is my estranged Aunt Lorraine's funeral, and this, my reflection in the mirror, is my answer to everyone who thinks a jumpsuit is too flashy for mourning. A year ago, after a messy breakup, I couldn't look at myself without cringing. I rebuilt confidence strand by strand, stitch by stitch, and this outfit feels like the truest version of me, respectful in color, defiant in style. My heels click against the hardwood as I shift weight from one foot to the other. The lace sleeves trace across my arms, delicate but firm, like the boundaries I've learned to draw in my life. I tug my hair into a sleek low bun, then lift my chin. The glass stares back without judgment, but I can almost hear the murmurs waiting outside these walls. I slip my phone into my clutch. It buzzes once, twice. The message reads, "Wear black, no exceptions." My cousin's text, sent at dawn. No heart emojis, no condolences, just a demand. I inhale, fingertips grazing the smooth leather. I want to type back, "This is black, see you at the chapel." But I don't. I close my eyes, mentally stepping into the church. I lace my fingers around the clutch strap and exhale. My aunt's voicemails from last summer play across my memory. Her warm laugh, her whispered encouragement when I second-guessed my choices. She never cared about rules. She cared about honesty. If she were here, she'd remind me that authenticity is the greatest respect. The front door swings open with a protest, and I'm facing the humid Charleston morning. The pale sky matches the funeral program clutched in my free hand. My heart thrums, but fear isn't enough to make me turn back. Not today. A final glance in the hall mirror, the jumpsuit's tailored waist, the lace that hints at skin without revealing it. Perfect balance. I step onto the porch, the wooden boards creaking beneath my heels. My breath catches as I see the black-tinted windows of the church just down the street, looming like a silent jury. I should be nervous, but instead, I feel the familiar hum of self-respect. I was never one for standing in the shadows, and Aunt Lorraine taught me that bright souls leave dark legacies. I shake off the doubt. As I head down the steps, my phone buzzes again. A new message, unread. I stop, fingers frozen on the clutch clasp. What now? I felt the chapel doors breathe as I pushed them open, the hush inside swallowing the click of my heels. Rows of polished oak pews stretched before me, the air heavy with candle wax and whispered condolences. Dressed head to toe in black lace, skeletal patterns tracing my arms, I slipped into the back row. Every eye in the room felt like a spotlight trained on my jumpsuit. My chest tightened. I reminded myself that I was here to honor Aunt Lorraine, not to shrink into a silent apology. I inched down the pew, my skirt of lace brushing the kneeler beneath. The wood felt cold against my fingertips as I sat, straightening my posture. A suzerainess of murmurs rose around me, an inaudible tide of judgment. I caught glimpses of pursed lips, a woman 2 rows ahead, her phone raised just enough to capture my silhouette. My cousin, Emma, leaned close, her voice a dry whisper. "Mara, did you have to lace?" Her words clipped the air like a scythe. I forced my breathing slow, controlled. The minister's soft, sorrowful voice rattled through the stained glass windows, but I only heard the ripple of gossip. A man in a crisp gray suit nudged his wife. An elderly aunt tucked her pearls against her neck as if warding off temptation. My heart thudded. I gripped the edge of the pew, knuckles whitening. I could apologize. I could crumble and slip out the side door, but I'd spent too long rebuilding to unravel now. I thought of Aunt Lorraine's bright eyes when I told her about my art show last year, how she'd thrown her head back and cheered louder than anyone. If she were here, she'd be in the front row, applauding each black on black curve of my outfit. My breath steadied. I lifted my chin and let the stairs roll off me like rain on glass. The minister's voice softened as he cleared his throat, beginning the prayer. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the rhythm of his words wash over the tension knotting my shoulders. But then, sharp and urgent, Emma's hand flicked against mine. I opened one eye. She jerked her head toward the front. Mrs. Harding, a distant cousin, had risen, her spine rigid. Her lips moved, and I caught the tail end of her hush. "It's a funeral, not a party." The chapel's hush broke into a single, pointed gasp that fluttered through the pews, settling like ash on the hymnals. My pulse pounded beneath the lace. I leaned forward, hands braced on the pew in front, scanning the rows. I was pinned, exposed. A wild part of me wanted to bolt, to run until I heard no more whispers. But another part, the part Aunt Lorraine raised with pride, demanded I stay. I swallowed and sat back, adjusting the delicate neckline of my jumpsuit. The minister's sermon continued, But I wasn't listening to his words any longer. I was listening to the rhythm of my own pulse, the collective breath of the mourners, and the unspoken question: would I bow to tradition or carve my own right of respect? A sudden hush fell as the minister paused, eyes lifting from his notes. I followed his gaze and saw him looking right at me. My breath hitched. What would he say next? I could feel the minister's eyes on me like a spotlight as he cleared his throat mid-sentence. I watched Emma stride down the aisle, each step echoing against the oak floor. Her cheeks were flushed, anger or embarrassment, I couldn't tell, and she clutched her phone like a weapon. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, holding up the family group chat lit up in the screen's glow. "Look at all of them. Aunt Lorraine would be turning in her grave." A murmur rippled through the congregation. I felt every head swivel in my direction. The minister hesitated, his mouth opening and closing as though he were searching for words that wouldn't offend. Behind him, the open coffin sat like an altar of finality. My heart thudded so loud I thought I might hear it in the wooden rafters. I pressed my palms flat against the pew, steadying myself against the urge to flee. Emma's voice rose. "She's turned a funeral into a spectacle. She's disrespecting everything Grandma and Uncle Tom stand for." A gasp went up from the woman in front of me, and someone farther back moaned. I closed my eyes, wishing I could will myself invisible, but pride, like lace under my skin, held me in place. The minister glanced at me, then back at Emma, his mouth tightening. "Emma," he said quietly, voice strained, "this day isn't about clothes." His words hung uncomfortably in the narthex of judgment and sorrow. I dared a peek. Emma's face fell, but she folded her arms, triumphant. All eyes snapped to me. Heat flushed my cheeks. I tasted the metallic sting of anger mixed with grief. My aunt's favorite perfume, a soft powder scent, seemed to cling to my memory. I could feel her here with me, urging me not to shrink. My fists balled inside my lace sleeves. If I walked out now, I would prove them right, that my choices were shallow, attention-seeking. But every part of me, that new, steady core I'd built since my breakup, beat against that betrayal. I shifted forward, folding my arms across my chest. I would not apologize for loving her on my own terms. The minister's eyes flickered to the coffin, then back to me. His voice, when he spoke again, was softer, gentler. "We're here to remember Lorraine," he said. "Her spirit, her kindness, not our disagreements." His gaze lingered on Emma, but he didn't ask her to sit. He turned, opening the well-worn Bible. I exhaled, the tension ebbing from my shoulders. The hush returned as he resumed the eulogy, low and steady. Each word felt like a small victory, proof that grief could claim its own space, free from whispers. My breathing evened. Still, every syllable seemed to reverberate. Lorraine's laughter when I wore my first gallery piece, her pride when I dared to choose myself again. I let those memories wash over me. Then I heard the minister's next phrase, a single sentence that made me freeze. "And so, as we lay her to rest, let us remember that love outlives any dress code." All at once, I realized, the real conflict wasn't over lace or black, it was over who gets to define respect. My pulse quickened, and I lifted my chin. What would happen when I stood up? I felt the hammer of every whispered judgment as the final amen echoed through the chapel. The minister closed his Bible and stepped aside, and I relaxed, until my uncle appeared at the end of the aisle. His face was pale beneath the fluorescent lights, lips trembling like a wounded bird. With measured steps, he approached, the congregation parting before him as if he carried a casket himself. "Mara," he said, voice low but firm, "you need to leave." His eyes darted to the lace at my wrists. "This display is disrespectful to your aunt's memory." My throat tightened. I wanted to tell him he was the one disrespecting her spirit, but I bit back the retort. He straightened his tie, voice rising. "Remove yourself before I call security." A ripple went through the pews. Some shook their heads, others averted their eyes. My heart pounded like a funeral drum. I stood. The heels of my shoes clicked as I planted myself beside the pew. The lace sleeves hugged my arms like a second skin. "Uncle Tom," I said, keeping my voice steady, "my grief isn't a spectacle." My words felt fragile against his fury, but I held his gaze. "I loved her fiercely, and this jumpsuit doesn't change that." He inhaled sharply, nostrils flaring. "You're embarrassing the family." His hand hovered near his coat pocket, where I knew his phone waited. "I swear, if you don't leave right now." My chest tightened, but I leaned in. "Do you think she'd want us divided on her last day?" The chapel was silent, the air thick with the weight of his accusation. I saw Grandma's white hair gleam from her spot 2 rows up, but she didn't move. "Do you?" I pressed. "When she was dying, she told me stories about your suits, how you once showed up to her birthday in neon pink because you knew she'd laugh." My uncle's face flickered, a memory surfacing. "You told her she looked radiant that day, and she beamed." I swallowed. I'm wearing lace because she said to always be yourself, even when it scares people. A soft murmur spread. I felt tears burn behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I'm not here for drama, I said. I'm here because I loved her. My uncle's fists clenched at his sides. The minister cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably as he watched the family rift open before him. The hush broke only when Grandma rose, cane tapping against the floor. She took slow, deliberate steps toward us. The congregation leaned forward. Even the minister paused, watching. Her voice cracked but carried like a bell. Enough, she said. This is Aunt Lorraine's day. She turned to Uncle Tom. You taught her to find joy in colors, and now you shame your niece for wearing black lace. Her trembling finger pointed at me. Mara loved her. Isn't that what matters? A gasp rippled through the chapel. My uncle's shoulders sagged. He looked from Grandma to me, the challenge in his eyes dimming. Somewhere behind me, someone sniffled. The minister exhaled, closing his eyes. Uncle Tom took a step back, voice quieter. I'm sorry, he swallowed. I lost sight. He looked at me, genuine regret softening his features. Your family, I forgot. I nodded, relief washing over me like rain on hot pavement. Grandma patted my shoulder. The minister stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on my uncle's arm. Shall we finish? He murmured. The congregation shifted, and the coffin behind the pulpit seemed to settle in its place. But as we all faced forward again, the tension lingered, an invisible thread binding us all. I straightened my shoulders and took a slow breath. My lace sleeves felt less like armor now and more like a tribute. The chapel doors swung open, sunlight leaking in. I wondered, would this fragile truce hold once we walked outside? I watched the sunlight tilt through the stained glass as my uncle's apology echoed in the hush. My vision blurred, part tears, part relief, but I grounded myself on the smooth pew edge. Memories of Aunt Lorraine's arms wrapping around me and tight hugs filled my chest. She'd always known exactly when I needed that comfort, even when I tried to hide my tears. I let those memories anchor me as I prepared to speak. Uncle Tom's shoulders were still slumped, eyes cast downward. The minister cleared his throat, waiting. I drew in a breath so deep it pressed against my ribs, then let it out in a slow, controlled exhale. My voice trembled at first. Was she ever so rigid with you? I asked, my gaze drifting to his flamboyant suit at last year's Christmas dinner, the emerald green jacket dotted with gold buttons that he insisted was festive. Laughter had erupted around the table when he twirled. Aunt Lorraine winked at me from across the room. Did you ever tell her she couldn't wear something because it distracted you? A silence so profound it felt sacred fell. I could almost hear Aunt Lorraine's soft chuckle at that memory. My uncle's jaw tightened, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed. Around us, the congregation shifted. A few mourners dabbed at their eyes. He began, voice thick. He glanced at Grandma, who stood stoic, cane planted firmly. Then he looked at me, his eyes on the lace tracing my arms. I'm sorry, he said again, softer this time. I lost sight of what today is about. I nodded, letting the words settle in the heavy air. I loved her, I whispered, not to him but to everyone around me, the strangers in pews, the minister, even the open coffin. And I needed to honor her in a way that felt true to me. I pressed my palms together, fingertips grazing the lace. She taught me that respect isn't about rules, it's about intentions. A hush enveloped us, broken only by the muted sob of a woman 2 rows ahead. The minister cleared his throat, stepping forward to close the ceremony. I stayed rooted, breathing in the scent of polished wood and lilies, feeling every heartbeat. As the final prayer concluded, Grandma shuffled to my side. Her hand, gnarled but steady, slid into mine. You were brave, she murmured, eyes bright. Your aunt would be proud. I squeezed her hand, warmth spreading through me. Behind me, the congregation rose, chairs scraping softly against the floor. Some faces held apology, others held newfound respect. My uncle lingered at the end of the aisle, his suit sleeves rolled back as if he'd shed more than just his pride. I straightened, feeling the lace hug my silhouette like an old friend. The coffin was closed now, a barrier between past sorrow and the uncertain road ahead. I took a step forward, first alone, then guided by Grandma's steady presence. Each footfall echoed hope against the wood. Outside, the air was thick with humidity and possibility. But in that moment, standing in the chapel's heart, I felt unburdened. I had faced down tradition and family alike, and found respect in the quiet truth of my grief. My chest swelled with a determination as delicate and strong as the lace itself. For the first time since I woke up in front of that mirror, I knew exactly what came next. I could feel the walls of the vestibule constrict as the minister's gentle hand slid toward my elbow. Please, he murmured, voice low, let me guide you outside. But I refused to move, planting my heels on the worn tile. The door behind me rattled with hushed urgency, as if the chapel itself wanted me gone. I lifted my chin, eyes on the minister. Not until I get answers, I said, my voice steadier than I felt behind me. Emma's breath came in ragged bursts. She sprang forward, fingers curled around the lace at my shoulder. This ends now, she hissed, tugging so hard a few threads snapped. My skin tingled at the sudden intrusion, like betrayal incarnate. Before I could pull back, a trembling voice cut through the tension. Stop it, Grandma commanded, stepping between us. Her frail frame looked impossibly strong under the fluorescent lights. She raised her gnarled hands, knuckles white. Mara's grief is hers alone. You will respect it. Emma froze, gaze flicking from Grandma's stern face to mine. The minister swallowed, shifting uneasily as he held my elbow. Your grandmother's right, he said. Perhaps this isn't the place for. A cluster of church members hovered in the doorway, eyes darting between us. Their silent whispers wound through the air, growing taut with judgment. Someone muttered precedent, another spat disgrace. The stained glass filtered the late afternoon sun into muted rainbow shards, landing on my lace as though accusing me. I swallowed hard, heat blooming across my cheeks. My throat constricted, voice caught in the chaos, but Grandma's steady gaze anchored me. I drew a breath and spoke, each word deliberate. I'm here because I loved her. I looked at Emma. You tore at my clothes. You tried to undo your own sister's memory. Emma's face crumpled, but she didn't back down. She didn't deserve a spectacle. Her words faltered as Grandma's eyes bored into her. From behind the cluster, the chapel janitor appeared, summoned by an usher's urgent nod. He carried a set of rubber gloves and a hesitant expression, as though he regretted every step. His shoes scraped against the marble-like tile with quiet finality. The minister's shoulders sagged. I'm sorry, he whispered to me, pulling his hand back. I have to maintain order. Order, the word stung. I glanced at Grandma, her hand trembled on my arm, but she didn't let go. Emma's lip quivered. The anguish between us was more painful than any dress code violation. The janitor cleared his throat, rubber gloves snapping as he stretched them on. He advanced, eyes on mine, shoulders squared in duty. My heart thundered, panic and resolve surging in equal measure. The vestibule door framed the empty steps beyond, a threshold I had crossed willingly once, but now I stood my ground. Beside me, the minister took a breath and stepped back, hands raised in reluctant concession. Emma turned away, tears slipping free. Grandma looked at me, eyes wet but unwavering. The janitor halted an arm's length away, gloved hand poised. The congregation's murmurs coalesced into a single expectation, that I would yield. I swallowed, mind racing. Every memory of Aunt Lorraine, her encouraging smile when I first wore lace, her gentle defiance of every rule, flared in my chest. My breath steadied. If you remove me, I said, voice calm but firm, you remove a piece of her legacy. The janitor's gloved hand wavered. The minister looked torn. Emma sniffled, shame flooding her features. Grandma pressed my arm and whispered, You've done her proud. Outside, the late-day light shifted, waiting. Inside, every pair of eyes fixed on me and the man poised to cross a line. Time rounded the corner toward inevitability. I clenched my fists at my sides. The janitor exhaled, raising his hand. And in that suspended heartbeat, I realized, this moment would define more than my funeral. It would define my voice. What would happen when his palm made contact? I braced for the clash. The rain hit my face before I even reached the bottom step, each heavy drop like a punctuation mark on the chaos I'd just lived through. Outside the chapel's grand doors, the sky had split open into slate-gray sheets, and I crouched on the cold stone threshold. Heels sinking into puddles that reflected the fractured clouds above, my black lace, jumpsuit already plastered to my skin, thread by delicate thread, tracing the shape of my defiance. Friends and strangers alike had already begun bombarding my phone. Angry texts accusing me of spectacle, earnest DMs praising my courage, notifications from social media accounts I didn't even recognize, all colliding in a frantic symphony that made my chest ache with both shame and vindication. Then I noticed the camera lights bobbing through the gathering crowd. A local news crew, their lenses trained on me like hungry birds swooping in for scraps of scandal, microphone extended, as though they expected me to justify every tearful glance and soaked sleeve. My breath caught at the sight of their logos, words I'd never wanted attached to my grief, but beneath the weight of judgment I felt something shift, relief, fierce and unexpected, blooming in my throat. I wasn't invisible anymore. My private sorrow had cracked open into something universal, a spark that wouldn't be extinguished by whispers in oak-lined pews. With shaking fingers, I pulled from my clutch the worn photograph of Aunt Lorraine, her eyes alight with laughter, hair wind blown on some sunlit day, and held it up to the rain, droplets beating on the glossy surface like reluctant tears of their own. The news cameras swiveled to capture the image, the crowd falling silent as if they recognized in her smile the rebellion they'd once admired, but now feared. My heart pounded in time with the steady drum of rain on stone as I pressed the photo to my lips, my voice barely more than a breath. This was her spirit. And in that suspended moment, rain washing away the chapel's shame, strangers' eyes fixed on my trembling frame, I realized that no amount of water or whispered condemnation could ever dilute the truth I carried with me. What I would say to the world next was still unwritten, but as the first camera rolled, I knew my story had only just begun. I woke to my phone buzzing like a chorus of restless birds. A week's worth of sunlight had filtered through my apartment curtains as I hit upload on my video confession. I'd brewed strong coffee, pulled on the very same black lace jumpsuit, now a talisman of defiance, and pressed record. My heart rattled in my chest as the live count climbed past 10,000, then 20. I let the camera capture every unfiltered breath, every tremor in my voice as I recounted standing in that chapel vestibule, Grandma's blessing echoing in my ears. "Hi, everyone," I began, voice raw. "I'm Mara from Charleston, and this is the story Aunt Lorraine helped me write." I spoke about the judgment, the confrontation, and the moment I refused to be silent. Mid-video, I played Grandma's clipped audio, her voice cracked but fierce. Respect her grief, respect her choice. I watched my own reflection on the tiny screen, saw the lace hug my arms like a second skin, and felt a surge of pride. Comments exploded beneath the player. "Thank you for owning your truth." I cried watching this. My family did the same to me. Strangers shared their own funeral fights, their whispered shames, their small victories. Others apologized for doubting me. Some even donated to a grief support fund I added to the description, inspired by Aunt Lorraine's work with hospice patients. I let the numbers roll in, but ignored the occasional trolls' barbs about drama or attention-seeking. This was never about attention. It was about breaking the silence around how we grieve. When the live count hit 45,000 views, I leaned back against my couch and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Later that afternoon, Grandma called on video chat. Her gnarled hands trembled as she lifted a glass of iced tea. "You were brave," she said, tears glimmering in her eyes. "You gave everyone permission to mourn their way." I clutched the phone tight, honoring the legacy she and Lorraine built, one where authenticity mattered more than propriety. That evening, I wandered to my aunt's favorite garden, wild Confederate jasmine spilling over stone walls, night-blooming flowers yielding their sweet perfume. The lace of my jumpsuit caught the fading light, petals brushing against my ankles. I pressed my palm to a warm stone bench, remembering Lorraine's stories, how she'd snuck me here as a child, how she whispered that real freedom begins when you stop apologizing for your own skin. I cupped a fallen jasmine blossom in my hand and held it close to my heart. The world had seen me at my most vulnerable, and I'd stood and sat and argued, without shame. I thought of the voices on my video, the solidarity that had bloomed overnight like those garden flowers, and I felt a fierce hope take root. My phone buzzed again. Another message, another share, another story of someone reclaiming their grief. I smiled through the lace's delicate pattern and whispered to the empty air, "This is only the beginning." A rustle of petals answered. The future was waiting.